superintendent's report.
Okay, there's quite a bit here tonight, some under other matters as well. But to start off, Gail and Becky Frost, Principal of Island Avenue, are going to join me in a presentation on our overall district approach to social emotional programming. It's a timely topic, an important topic, and I did invite Tina Garrity from MAID, and we met last week. We've worked very closely with MAID and Youth and Family Services, and I asked Tina to join us. So thanks for coming today. So, Gail, while you're setting up, I'm going to do a little intro. And you're already set up.
I'm so set up.
You are so set up. Okay.
Because we were late. She had to time.
So there's been a lot of focus, and I believe rightfully so, around the development of social and emotional capacities in kids in public schools at all ages. There's a number of reasons for that. I believe it has to do with episodes of school violence that have happened nationally. The way the high-stakes testing pendulum has kind of swung back and forth over the years. And there's also been a lot of societal changes. It includes the technology and substance abuse and so forth. For a variety of reasons, and it could be political, financial, it could be competence reasons, ability, capacity. Schools have had a tendency really to react to trends and sometimes neglecting a real thoughtful, deliberate approach to programs and approaches that are going to meet the social and emotional needs of kids. About actually a little more than 5 years ago, the board adopted a vision statement. It's on the website, and an emphasis was placed in that vision statement on the social emotional development of our kids. The efforts that we have undertaken, Gail, can you just mute that for a second, because I'm seeing eyes go all over the place. Thanks. I'm almost ready. The efforts that we've undertaken as a district really predate the way the educational marketplace has been absolutely flooded with off-the-shelf products. And that is the reactive nature of public schools. Something emerges as a need, and suddenly you find literally $1 billion industry. So whether if it was the technology, the ubiquity of technology in the early part of the 2000s, and then the responses to the testing movement, and now around social emotional, there is a lack of really understanding the context of what kids are going through and matching your programs and approaches to what kids really need locally. So our programs, our approaches are really a systemic effort. We really look at the whole system, K through 12, we look at the whole child, and we really dive into the literature and the research around how do we meet kids' needs in these areas. We're far from perfect, but we certainly do everything that we can to develop and foster in a proactive way, but also to respond and react when we need to when things go awry for kids. So Gail, Becky, and I are going to take you through a very comprehensive approach tonight to how we have developed this over the last, I'd say probably better part of 4 or 5 years, I suppose. And really led to the formation 3 or 4 years ago of the Whole Child Wellness Team, which has slightly over 40 members, I believe, in the district right now, as well as a partnership. We have Youth and Family Services. I know Angela participates, and Scott participates, Cochran as well, from Youth and Family. So our goal really tonight is an overarching presentation to the board, and quite honestly, to the camera. What we intend to do is to take this part of the presentation tonight, to clip it, and have a particular YouTube clip that will go under a separate tab on the website for how do we foster the social and emotional capacities of our kids. This will be one resource on there among many, but I'm going to turn it over to Gail to get the, we are up. I can't see behind me. So.
You can't?
I know.
You said vision?
In a classroom, you're a teacher, you're supposed to have eyes back there. I am going to go over to the podium. And you probably should have staged this a little bit better. Do you want to come up front here, Becky, as opposed to back there? And this looks like, right? Solid fluff here.
No, it's fine.
This is going to be a camera challenge tonight for you, okay? So
Pivot.
Okay, so social emotional learning. If you take a look, this was what folks don't, I think, either realize or remember. The vision statement that was drafted and adopted by the board through action, formal action in this room, began in November of 2012 when about 50 community members came to 3 separate education summits. And they were invited. We have the biographies of all those folks that joined us those nights. There were 3 different nights. And all of that input from the community then came to the administrative team, and ultimately, Seth, you're the only legacy member here, to the Board of Ed. I'm sure you remember that. It was a hot August afternoon where we came in on Saturday, and the board finally put the finishing touches on the vision statement, their vision for 21st education. And if you're involved in the planning and the curriculum committee work over the past year, you've seen this ad nauseum. You know the work that this has done to drive a lot of our academic work. But what I want to point to is that very, very specifically, fostering the talents and abilities of each child in an emotionally and physically safe environment, and envisioning learning as joyful, dropping down here, and you see approaching learning with effort and persistence, responding to success and failure with resiliency, reflection, adaptability, responsible ethical decision making. There's very little about academic standards and content standards in those comments in there, those statements. Those statements are purely about the social and emotional development of our children. The great thing about it for us as educators, we're standing on mounds of literature around child development. This has been a studied topic for decades with great information to drive the work that we do in classrooms. So this vision statement has gone well beyond driving the curriculum work and the academic work. It's found its way across all parts of the system, and we're going to take you through that tonight. So just real quickly, how do our schools take a systems approach? And that's a key phrase right here, the systems approach here. Not just an off-the-shelf product, not just kind of what is a hot topic and let's address it. How do we look at the whole child in a systems way, fostering the social and emotional learning for all of our students?
So one way we do that.
There we go.
Like we were
For the record, we have not rehearsed this script. It's coming off okay so far.
What, 6 years together, we'll do
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So one of the ways that we make sure that our systems that we have in place are grounded in research, stand really firm, are understood by all staff, is through our whole child wellness team. And as Tom said, this team is in its third, maybe fourth year of existence, actually. Again, 40 members strong. And this is a dedicated group of professionals across the district, represented by teachers, guidance counselors, social workers, school psychologists, administrators, teachers, and also community partners such as Madison Youth and Family Services, where we really consider ourselves, certainly never the experts, but always in pursuit of the latest in research in terms of child development and best practices for our classrooms and how we can support students. We have a firm belief that if you're going to have kids be available for learning to read, learning to write, learning math, science, social studies, that they need to be emotionally available, that they need to feel safe, again, emotionally and also physically. So this team can serve sort of as a clearinghouse for decisions that we make in the district. Tom has an idea, he runs it by us. We call the research and present back to him. We also make recommendations if we see something that maybe we can do a better way. But in the short 3 years that this team has been together, these bullets over on the right-hand side are just some highlights of the work that this team has done. And keep in mind as you go through these things, like this is not a team that works on this full-time. We have full-time jobs in other places in the district, and they're doing this out of the goodness of their hearts because they know it's best for kids, and a lot of it on their own time. The first bullet is probably the cornerstone of all of this work and this entire presentation tonight. But this team actually last year worked at Polson for 2 days to create a list of developmental milestones for each grade level and each age. So really, before we start to make decisions, what is appropriate for a child's physical needs in pre-K, K, and 1 versus a 7th and 8th grader versus a high schooler? What do they need emotionally? So we have a list of those developmental milestones, and we routinely refer back to that guide when we are making decisions. It really is sort of that foundational document to this kind of work. We've also created really clear delineations for tiered support to support kids through when they struggle with social emotional learning or behavior. And really create these guides for teachers so that they know what to do and they know the resources that are available to them, the protocols to go through to best support kids when they're struggling. So that document was also created by this team, and we have some more details on that later to come. The curriculum piece of this work was also supported by the Whole Child Wellness team. We've worked as a subcommittee to create a K12 Guiding Document. So just like we have a K12 Guiding Document for English Language Arts, for math, for science, for social studies, we have a guiding document for social emotional health that outlines our goals. You know, when kids graduate, Daniel Hand, what do we want them to be able to do in terms of decision making and with their social emotional emotion regulation, things like that. We've clearly outlined that, so we're all on the same page of what we're working towards. And lastly, another sort of umbrella that this team takes care of is recommending programs and systems for our approach to social emotional health. So you're going to hear a lot about responsive classroom tonight as our chosen approach for K-8 social emotional health. That was not just chosen at random, that program, Responsive Classroom. The wellness team spent days looking at, I would say, over a dozen programs, different curriculums, packages, approaches, conference calls, site visits, to really have Responsive Classroom rise to the top and recommend that to the superintendent as our approach. And you should also know that we looked at it K4 and chose Responsive Classroom as our cornerstone program. And when it came up to look at 5-8 programming, we didn't just assume it would be Responsive Classroom still. We again looked at, okay, developmental milestones, back to that first bullet. What do our adolescents need? And what program is going to meet their needs the best? It just so happened that for both groups we chose Responsive Classroom, but it's really nice because now our K-8 teachers all have common language and a common approach and a consistency of purpose for our kids. So it's been a busy team, and we have lots of work left to do this year as well, and things that we're excited about to just keep the conversation rolling, and again in that pursuit to always say, how can we best meet the really diverse needs of our kids?
And for the board's purposes too, the board adopted a strategic plan via the balanced scorecard. The Whole Child Wellness team is very active, and their work is very active. One of the strategic objectives adopted was to foster whole child wellness. So you'll see a lot of their fingerprints in the work going forward in the strategic planning process. So how do we take a systems approach in fostering social emotional learning for all students?
Yeah, you can.
Okay, I can do that. So we get 4 different levels here. Obviously, one of the most powerful research-based approaches towards school improvement is investing in the folks who do the work. That's right. It's kind of a simple concept. When you do that and do it well, you get people who are very capable, who are very effective, and who have a feedback loop of what's working and how do we improve. So Gail has some exhibits to share tonight, but also offline as well, of where those PD dollars have been going, and those training dollars have been going towards improving the skill set of our folks when it comes to dealing with social emotional wellness, social emotional capacities. Curriculum development. So this is what we do. We're educators, we teach. That's our thing. So what do we do from a curriculum perspective? On very near horizon, we're looking at a K12 wellness curriculum cycle, which will cover our comprehensive school counseling program, our guidance counselors, and beyond that, our health program, and so forth. Becky mentioned the guiding document, which is all the key kind of broad outcomes by grade level. And if you go back to that vision statement that I showed before, we developed a matrix of 15 different student outcomes. And those outcomes you can point to very, very specific student outcomes around social emotional development. We'll show you that shortly. Tiered support. So what do we do at Tier 1 for all kids? All kids get access to. What do we do for some kids at Tier 2 who need some additional supports? And what do we do for some acute cases? So we're going to fill in those gaps there for the board to see all those different tiers, proactively and responsively. And finally, you know, it kind of goes without saying, and I had this good conversation with Tina about this and with some other folks as well. We've taken a lot of little bites out of the apple along the way. I'll give you one example. We doubled recess a couple of years ago at the elementary level. That was clearly with an eye towards what kids need developmentally, socially, physically. We looked at a full-day kindergarten model here. Seth, you were there for that adoption as well now, 6 years ago. And it was not an eye to double math and double the language arts instruction. It was to get kids to have time and space for developmental play, to really foster that whole child side. So look at that. We have a whole list of different little targeted programming that we did that we'll wrap the presentation up. Now,
Yeah.